talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday to everybody out there. We got a little bit of a short week because of Memorial Day. So thanks, everybody, for being with us this morning. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality, you have found it. And we're building a liberty machine here. I guess for the graphic, at least today, what was impressed on me over the weekend is that the Democrat Party, and we're going to get into this, the Democrat Party are very worried about declassification. They're very worried. They're very concerned about President Donald Trump giving William Barr the authority to declassify everything, asking that the intelligence community cooperate with all investigations. They are very, very concerned about this. And that is abundantly clear to me right now. And I'll remind you, and maybe we'll get to this. I know I had plans when I was on the weekend. I had plans to, I sent the video to myself. Chuck Schumer was being interviewed by Rachel Maddow. Do you remember when this happened? He was being interviewed by Rachel Maddow, and he said that when you go after the intelligence community, they have 6 ways to Sunday to come and get you. Now, specifically, he's talking about President Trump and the intelligence community getting a sitting president. And it really goes against the idea of a civilian-led government, of an executive branch that is civilian-led, doesn't it? Makes you think, again, and I've said this before, I said this in our Patreon video last week, right before the Memorial Day holiday, that our government doesn't feel monolithic, as some would have you believe that it is. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much. Folks, be in prayer for those who are in the path of the potential flooding that may happen in our state. We do have some serious concerns. I was reading that Governor Asa Hutchinson, he is acting accordingly, getting resources ready and that sort of thing. I understand the president tweeted at the Oklahoma governor, said that he spoke with the Oklahoma governor about some of the flooding there. But the Arkansas River is expected to swell. And there are our fellow statesmen who are going to be in a path of some potential flooding, and that's just going to be very stressful for a lot of Arkansans, wondering what's going to happen. So just be in prayer for them and as well as our neighbors to the west. Folks, telephone number 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the program today. That's 870-275-9799. We do have a good show for you. Coming up at the top of the next hour, we'll be doing an impression of the session with State Representative Mark Lowry. Also, another impression of the session at 7:33 with the State Director from Americans for Prosperity Arkansas, Mr. Ryan Norris, who I understand was on the program last week when I was on vacation with Mr. Josh Waters, but I wanted to get his take. I wanted to talk to him specifically about, generally what his impression was of that 92nd General Assembly that we're still in the wake of. You listen to the introduction of this program, you have people talking, you hear Ronald Reagan, you have people talking about raising taxes. Well, they did that. They did that. In our state, we had the higher-ups not only talking about it, but they actually did it. When it comes to when you put it all together, when we can agree on the definitions of words and phrases, what is a tax increase, what is a tax cut, what is revenue neutral, what is the tax burden, what is the net tax relief, all of these things that we've been talking about now for, I think, a good year. It's probably been a good year since I started telling you, at least my wish was that the people in the on the right in the state of Arkansas, locally, could at least start to agree on the definitions of words and phrases that we want to use to, that are popular, like tax cuts. That's a popular political phrase. People want to campaign on it. But do you actually want to do it, or do you just want to make people think? I mean, honestly, if you were a fraud, if you were a fraud and you didn't mind deceiving the people in the state of Arkansas, in order to maintain political power, you're going to have to figure out a way to raise the people's taxes so government can continue to grow, take more money from them, but then at the same time convince them that they not only did that did not happen, but their taxes actually went down. Think about it. That's what you would have to do in a state like Arkansas, where the political climate has shifted so fast to the right over the last decade. Telephone number 870-275-9799. In some international news today, we're going to go over to Israel. We have a new coalition that is attempting to form around the newly elected leader, Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, he's not a new leader, but you get the point. So it's a new government, if you will. And they're saying that this may not happen. They're saying that there may have to be new elections because Benjamin Netanyahu may not have the support that he needs to form a government. Yeah, I know. When other countries, the way they form governments is weird. Well, they look at us and they think we're weird. And then, of course, you've got the Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg that says if you're going to look to a constitution to form a new government, you shouldn't look to America's. You should look to South Africa's. As the Daily Wire noted last month, this from Josh Hammer at the Daily Wire, Benjamin Netanyahu was seemingly reelected to serve a fifth term as Israel's prime minister, thus placing the likelihood the leader at the precipice of surpassing iconic national founder David Ben-Gurion as the longest-serving prime minister in the history of the Jewish state. At that time, he writes, here's how I explained it. Anyway, the bottom line is right now, it doesn't look like this is going to happen. It looks like that now the president has intervened here. President Trump has tweeted support for Benjamin Netanyahu, saying, listen, we need to make the Israeli-American relationship even stronger, and that's going to really help if Benjamin Netanyahu stays in power, essentially. So I'm not an expert in Israel foreign policy, other than the fact that I do tend to support Israel just because they are a Western civilization country in a place where there is very little light when it comes to the idea of personal individual freedom, and that's not without getting into the biblical significance of it at all, which we could, and I would love to do that sometime, but anyway. So, again, telephone number 870-275-9799. Speaking of governments, though, a big blow to the European Union over the weekend, or over the holiday. The European Union held elections for their little, parliament that they have, where they take all of these sovereign nations' money and they send it to the European Union, and then the European Union sends it back to the nation states with strings attached, telling them what they can and can't do. It was a big win. You have, let's see, we go back to the Daily Wire here, Casey Dillon, and you do have the people who are pro-European Union. They are still in control of that parliament there. But you have the what is being called the Eurosceptic side, which I think could kind of amount to a lot of different views, but mainly they don't like the European Union. Italy, for example, listen to this, the Anti-Immigration and Nationalist Party, Lega Nord, or the League Party, reportedly secured a victory of 28 seats. Following the win, the leader, Interior Minister Matteo Salvini, said, "A new Europe is born." Quote, "As far as I'm concerned, if the League wins, nothing changes in Italy. Everything will change in Europe starting from tomorrow," he added. In the United Kingdom, The Brexit Party, which is 6 weeks old, led by Nigel Farage, had a comfortable victory, securing a majority of 31.7% in 29 seats. Farage called the results one hell of an achievement. In an interview, Farage said if the United Kingdom does not leave the European Union by October 31st, his party will go on to a general election and stun everybody there, too. Then on Twitter, he said, never before in British politics has a party just 6 weeks old won a national election. If Britain does not leave the European Union on October 31st, these results will be repeated at a general election. History has been made. This is just the beginning. Then in France, you have Marie Le Pen declaring a slight victory here because her party outperformed President Emmanuel Macron's party. She won 21 seats, her party, Macron, 21 seats. Now, listen, the Yellow Vest protests, by the way, are still going on. Nobody really talks about this, but they're still happening. They're protesting a lot of things. It isn't news for some reason. The only thing that when the Yellow Vests a couple months ago were making the news, you might have gotten maybe an inkling would have been, well, they're upset because they're, paying really, really high taxes. Then if you dive into more of that, it's more than just the high taxes that they're paying. It ends up being essentially a nationalist movement where they disagree with the globalism, because why are they having to pay such high taxes? Well, it's tied directly to the environment. Now, the European Union, or I'm sorry, the European parliamentary elections in France, to give kind of a balanced view here, they do say that the Green Party, Macron's party, did not frame the results as a loss, rather. They did not frame the results as a loss, and instead pointed to the environmental Green Party making gains as encouraging. Quote, it is clear from this result that the environment is a real concern for the French people. So, nobody wants to learn or moderate their views or opinions at all. Right? You could have weeks. How many weeks now have the Yellow Vest people been protesting the higher taxes to worship the earth? I'm sorry, that's a straw man. But how not? You know what I mean? It's that's a cheap shot. How many weeks have they been out there though? And you're able to spin things however you want. But the bottom line is, I don't think it's spin to. I think the objective truth here is clearly there are people who are seeing that the forces that are pushing towards like a centralized government in Europe are not. They don't have the best interests of the people at heart. It's an experiment that's not working out too well for the people that actually have to live under these laws that the people, in Brussels are passing. And they look to America, and they see that America elected a guy like Donald Trump, which is not for the status quo. Matter of fact, you've got they see that there's an entire section of the United States government, the deep state, that has tried to take the president out. They see that, and they see, that this idea that there is, we have immigration crises in every major country, every first world country almost in the world right now. Especially in Europe and America, the fact that we can't control our borders, Europe can't control its borders. You have the migration crisis in Germany, in France, in Italy. And that's just a coincidence. It just all happened at the same time, coincidentally. I don't buy that, and I don't think a lot of other people do. And so that it lends credence to this idea that, there certainly does appear to be this idea that, globalism. In order for globalism to work, you can't have borders. You just can't. Again, the telephone number 870-275-9799. We're going to take a break here. When I come back, I'm going to tell you probably the most explosive thing that happened over your Memorial Day weekend. Do you know what it was? It was a Republican Congresswoman from Wyoming, Liz Cheney, on ABC News' This Week with Martha Raddatz, who is just now barely in the recovery phase since President Trump won and Hillary lost, interviewing her, and she says that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page might have committed treason. She said this on national television, might have committed treason against America in their attempt to have an insurance policy. Wait till you hear this. Better yet, wait until you hear what other people are saying because of it. It's pretty rich. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hey folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. You know, for all of our listeners, if you ever missed the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your number one source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com. Let's face it, times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, here we go. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us today. Let's go ahead and get right to it. This is Congresswoman Liz Cheney, and this is her talking about what Peter Strzok and Lisa Page did. What do you think they did, talking about an insurance policy against then candidate, now President of the United States, and what they did afterwards? Wait till you hear how the liberal media is now trying to spin Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. But first, let's listen to Congresswoman Liz Cheney.
Room, refusing to do any of the things we...
Oh, well, we might have a slight hiccup, a technical glitch here. This will be much better right here.
Do any of the things we were elected to do, and instead
Martha
continuing
Raddatz and Liz Cheney. Martha Raddatz, by the way,
attacks and partisan investigations, partisan issuance of subpoenas.
And the president attacks back. Is that the right thing to do?
Look, I think that, what we have seen, if you look at...
Retweeting these videos that...
I think what is really crucially important to remember here is...
Oh, that's another thing I didn't get to. This stupid video of Nancy Pelosi that is obviously doctored. And I say the video is actually fantastic. I shouldn't say stupid video, but I'm tired of hearing about the stupid video. Can you believe that Vice President Mike Pence Donald Trump retweeted a doctored video trying to make Nancy Pelosi look drunk? Okay, first of all, it's a video that is obviously doctored. What's wrong with tweeting a video that's obviously doctored? What's wrong with that? They're acting like the fact that it's doctored means that it's that they're trying to deceive someone. This is the internet, people. It's a way to make fun of Nancy Pelosi. You could do this with a lot of people, right? And I'm sure there's plenty of videos of President Trump's speeches. You could do this with one of my monologues. The bottom line is Nancy Pelosi, there is something off about her. We all know this. There has been for a very long time. I'll reference the speech that she gave about, quote, the word. Go look that up, about the word. She's talking about the Bible, and it's really strange. You don't know what she's saying. So she has these little episodes. That press conference was strange, even if you watch it in its entirety without the edits. But the idea of like a doctored video, why do they keep saying this? Why do they keep saying doctored video as if we don't know that it's doctored? Everybody, if you watch it, know that it's just a montage of her slurring her words. That's all it is. That used to be okay. That used to be perfectly acceptable in the internet, even in American politics, but not anymore. That is odd to me. Back to Liz Cheney.
That you had Strzok and Page, who were in charge of launching this investigation, and they were saying things like, we must stop this president. We need an insurance policy against this president. That, in my view, when you have people that are in the highest echelons of the law enforcement of this nation saying things like that, that sounds an awful lot like a coup, and it could well be treason. And I think that we need to know more. We need to know what was Jim Comey's role in all of this. These people reported to him. Andy McCabe reported to him. What was Comey's role in that? And that is what the Attorney General is going to be focused on.
Let me talk about this, because you saw what the president did with Attorney General Barr. He said he could declassify all this intelligence. Do you worry that sources and methods might be revealed? Do you have any problems with him saying declassify this intelligence, even though he won't give the Mueller report and unredacted Mueller report?
And those are two separate issues, by the way. Those are two separate issues.
Has been delivered to Congress. Every single piece of it
they're
that
just
could
now
be
really
within the
actually
law.
starting to read it.
The amount that's been redacted that's available for key.
Okay, so this has been a huge deal. So right now, if you go to Google and you Google Peter Strzok, you're getting inundated with Liz Cheney articles. There's a Newsweek one, former general appalled at Liz Cheney's comments on treason. They are now trying to say, if you'll scroll down here in this tweet, that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were just two random FBI agents. The so-called conservative the so-called conservative blogger over at the Washington Post, Jennifer Rubin, she commented on this video on Twitter from ABC News. Shame on her. There were two FBI agents in private conversation, not top level, not decision makers. This is the intellectual corruption of the GOP. Wow, that's projection if I've ever seen it. Peter Strzok, ladies and gentlemen, is the counterintelligence espionage head, counter-espionage head for the FBI. The guy who was in charge of the Hillary Clinton email investigation. That's who Peter Strzok is. And yet the left and the media wants you to think that, oh, no, they're just now two random FBI agents, middle of the rung, low level. No, these were high up.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Speaking of rebels, I got to imagine you feel a little bit like a rebel if you
Yeah,
are
we've
a
got
member
some
of the United States
I'm
House
wearing
of
the same
Representatives and a Republican with the Democrats in control and Nancy Pelosi giving press conferences like she did yesterday. Here's one of those rebels is Congressman Bruce Westerman. He's on the phone with us right now. Bruce, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. I'm back in Sanctuary in Arkansas.
Good.
Out of D.C. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So Arkansas sort of is a sanctuary state, but not in the way, not in the way that you would think. You know.
Yeah. We often tease some of our friends on the Democratic side that aren't necessarily in Speaker Pelosi's court, that if they speak out against her, we will allow them to come to our office for sanctuary up there.
Is that a thing though? There are Democrats up there that are just kind of like they don't really agree with her leadership.
Well, there's quite a divide in the Democratic caucus up there right now, and you've got the Democrats that were what would have used to maybe being called Blue Dog Democrats that weren't necessarily in Pelosi's court. And now you've got these, I don't know how you would classify them as, pretty radical left-wing extremist Democrats, AOC and Tlaib and Omar, who are also not necessarily in Pelosi's court. So she's having to do quite the balancing act just within her caucus.
It does seem like it. She seems she's she's scared of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who said that we only had 12 years until the world was going to end because of climate change. And then she said she was just joking, and that anyone who actually believed her had the brain the size of a sea sponge. Then there was a poll done.
Well, I would agree with that second part, but I don't think she was joking on the first part.
Me neither. And then they did a poll, and like a vast majority of Democrats believe that we've only got 12 years left. So it's like, okay, well, they've got the brains the size of a sea sponge.
Well, and all the Democratic candidates for president have embraced her plan. So, what does that tell you?
Yeah, you're exactly right. How are things going up there now? I mean, we just had the news of the president, giving Bill Barr the authority to look further into these intelligence agencies need to cooperate with the attorney.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I just realized that I'm wearing the same shirt. I'm wearing the same shirt that I wore on Friday. And because we've got the old clip going, anyway, sorry. It's just weird. It's I've got a rotation going. Yes, I do. I got out of whack here. All right, welcome back to the show. Coming up at the top of the hour, we'll be talking with State Representative Mark Lowry. You definitely don't want to miss that. He'll be giving his impression of the session. Then Americans for Prosperity, the State Director, Mr. Ryan Norris, will be on the program, be back on the program. But we're going to get his impression of the session as well, so we're excited about that. Let's go to this tweet by Ned Ryan. Ned Ryan is a conservative Christian for American... he is on Twitter, conservative Christian. He is the CEO of AM National. Hang on one second, because I had this pulled up, and now my screen is... So, yeah, AM National, which stands for American Majority. Right, okay. So, Ned Ryan, in response to the so-called conservative blogger Jennifer Rubin, who writes over at the Washington Post, he says, in response to her, shame on her, meaning Liz Cheney. There were 2 FBI agents in private conversation, not top level, not decision makers. This is the intellectual corruption of the GOP. That is projection. And, I mean, you are projecting the very thing that you're guilty of onto your opponents. Fact of the matter is, you cannot tell me that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were just 2 agents. No, they're just 2 agents talking about needing an insurance policy in case President Donald Trump wins the election. Peter Strzok was the head of counter-espionage and was the head of the Hillary Clinton investigation into her emails. This is not, but the left now wants you to think, oh, yeah, it wasn't a coup, it wasn't a treason. Now that we have somebody in, a congresswoman from Wyoming, Liz Cheney, saying it could very well be a coup, it could very well be treason. I mean, yeah, what'd you call it? It's the executive branch, for goodness sake. The executive branch is what the Justice Department, it's how it exists. It's underneath the executive branch of our government. And so you have the bureaucracy under the executive branch trying to oust or create an insurance policy. What was the insurance policy? Well, the insurance policy was they were going to blame Russia. They were going to, once again, project the very thing that they're guilty of, colluding with the Russians, the Democrats, Hillary Clinton, not only the Russians, but also apparently now the UK and other allies as well. We'll find all that out eventually. Again, they're afraid of this declassification. Ned Ryan responds to the so-called conservative Jennifer Rubin. You mean one of the top lawyers at the FBI and the chief of counterespionage for the FBI? Because I want to make sure you're not trying to spread a false narrative that these were just two random FBI agents who were having an affair, who were tweeting about insurance policies and making sure that, they got President Trump out of office. And notice Liz Cheney doesn't stop with Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. She also says we need to know what James Comey's role was in all of this. We need to know what Andrew McCabe's role was in all of this. And we kind of already know what James Comey's role was. Kind of already know what Andrew McCabe. These guys are so scared that they're going to be charged. Andrew McCabe specifically. He is so scared that he's going to be charged with a crime. That's why he wrote a book about trying to sway the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the members of the cabinet, to turn on the president and invoke the 25th Amendment. Why do you think they came out and they said, well, Andrew McCabe and Peter and was it Rosenstein talked about wearing a wire to get some leverage on the president of the United States? What? Are you serious? So Andrew McCabe goes out, writes a book, goes on tour, goes on national media outlets to normalize what he had done. There's only one reason he did that, was to attempt to normalize, to get out in front of it so that it wouldn't be a bombshell and the public wouldn't be calling for some action against him. It was a psychological move to try to normalize the crimes that Andrew McCabe, I believe, committed. John Brennan, same thing. That man's a very nervous individual. He's on CNN. He's out there constantly trying to purport that he is somehow an equal to President Trump. He's just as credible. He did nothing wrong, that it's Trump that did. You want to know who's accused President Trump of treason and nobody had a problem with it like they do now? John Brennan on national TV says that the president is treasonous. We now have James Comey and John Brennan arguing over who really wanted the Steele dossier included in the FISA warrant in the first place. And we're going to find all of this out. By the way, there's also more actors that I don't even think we know about yet. So time will tell. But you can certainly telegraph. You can use context clues and figure out what's going on here. But not if you're going to rely, and this is important, you have to understand for your friends at the water cooler, you're not going to do that unless, you're not going to be able to do this if you want to take Anderson Cooper's word for it. If you want Martha Raddatz of ABC News to tell you this, no, you're going to have to put the pieces together yourself, and you're going to have to start by at least entertaining the idea that, in this case, my goodness, truth is stranger than fiction. Telephone number 870-275-9799. Folks, want to remind you, you can log on to our Facebook page right now, and you can catch the show visually. We're broadcasting video. It is facebook.com/Conduit News, or if you'd rather just listen on your YouTube app on your phone, you can do that as well. It's Conduit News. We would like for you to subscribe and click the little bell to receive notifications. And shameless pitch, if you believe in what we're doing here, trying to give you the news, specifically focused on Arkansas, which is what we're going to be doing in the next hour for sure, focusing on impressions of the session and everything else. I would love for you to give us $5 a month. Get our extra video that we're doing every week. Just an extra video from me. We still have plans. We still want to grow it. We want to do more than we're doing. But for $5 a month, you can go to patreon.com/CNR and you'll have access. You'll get notified every week when we have the new video that's up. And that's just our way of trying to give you a little bonus content, and you can also support a show that you like. So it's pretty easy, patreon.com/CNR. That's Conduit News Radio, CNR. And sign up, $5 a month to get the video. All right, moving on, let's go to this story. Speaking of fake news, this is all what you missed over the weekend, folks. It was actually pretty jam-packed. If you think about the European elections, you think about what's going on in Israel, what went on with Jennifer Rubin or Liz Cheney, and then the media's response that the liberal left wants you to think that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were just two random FBI agents. That's crazy. Here is Time magazine columnist. The Time columnist posts a quote from Trump that goes viral, then admits it was a fake. It was a fake. So the president's been in Japan. Can we show the president? Can we go somewhere else first? Let's show what the president's been doing in Japan. You know, sometimes, folks, diplomacy is hard. Here's President Trump with a sumo wrestler. No, start right there. Here's President Trump. Here's President Trump. Yeah. Sometimes diplomacy is hard. And they're giving Trump's giving the sumo wrestler a giant trophy, folks. Yep. Stop. That is a powerful man. So Trump, for those of you that aren't watching, he's giving the sumo wrestler, and the sumo's in a full sumo, what do you call that? I don't know. Thong diaper. Yeah. Whoa, I'm sorry. You know, I guess I'm just not very cultured. I apologize. So anyway, that was President Trump. He's in Japan, and so while he's in Japan, you have this a mawashi. Yeah. That's what it's called. That's the technical term. Thank you, Joe. In sumo, a mawashi is the belt with the one. So the source of a quote from the Daily Wire attributed to Donald Trump about sleepy Joe Biden and Kim Jong-un. It was widely promoted by media figures and Trump critics. The guy has now said that it was fabricated. They just made it up. So the president is on a foreign trip, of diplomacy. He meets, I think, for the first time, the Emperor and Empress of Japan. Quote, this was the fake news. President Trump in Tokyo. Quote, Kim Jong-un is smarter and would make a better president than sleepy Joe Biden, end quote. That's the Time magazine foreign affairs columnist and editor-at-large, Ian Bremmer, Mr. Bremmer. The Washington Examiner and the Daily Caller noted the quote was left up for several hours while various critics of Trump promoted it, and they were outraged. Representative Ted Lieu, you had Media Matters, Andrew Lawrence, CNN contributor Anna Navarro. The latter urging people to not shrug off the quote and declaring Trump's supposed comment, praising a cruel dictator who violates human rights, threatens nuclear attacks, oppresses his people, and kills political opponents is not freaking normal, end quote. But it was all fake. It wasn't a real quote. It wasn't true. It was fake news. and everyone spins up. I mean, I guess these liberals like Anna Navarro should send her therapy bills to Mr. Ian Bremmer, don't you think? Because, I mean, her whole day was ruined. This is not freaking normal. Back to the Daily Wire. As documented by the Examiner's Jerry Dunleavy, after the tweet went viral, Bremmer initially posted a defense of his fake quote, describing it as plausible and saying it was a comment on, quote, the state of the media and the Twitterverse today. Well, that's a little bit of cop-out. But amid mounting pressure, Bremmer ultimately chose to delete the, quote, objectively ludicrous quote, end quote. So then we have this other guy who tweeted this. Let's see. This is if this alleged quote from Trump is accurate, it's a propaganda win for the disgusting, murderous tyrant that is Kim Jong-un. This is according to Dunleavy. But if this quote is fabricated, it's truly deceitful. It's a truly deceitful piece of fake news, and I'd like more than just Ian Bremmer's say-so before I decide which. Okay, and then, he tagged Bremmer in there. So eventually he had to figure it out. So, my goodness, what is going on here? Why in the world do you have journalists who they're throwing out every ethical standard they have? And there's only one explanation. That you have journalist after journalist after journalist that if they have the exact wrong bad day, they become psychologically unhinged. For whatever reason, most of these journalists, because this is not the first time this has happened, most of these journalists are making this personal. They personally believe that the ends justify the means, I guess. And why else would you tweet that out there? I mean, do you not think somewhere in the back of the Time magazine foreign correspondent, somewhere in the back of his mind, Mr. Bremmer was like, oh, I'm going to get caught? Do you not? I mean, he clearly, somewhere in the back of his mind, had to think, oh, this is, I'm going to get caught on this, but I just have to say it anyway. Because why? Because it was better to self-gratify this urge to trash President Trump because you think you're morally superior. That's what we have here. We have an entire press corps, relatively speaking, I mean, not all of them. They believe that they are morally superior to President Donald Trump. You have a lot of millennials who are my age who believe that they themselves, right now, are morally superior to President Donald Trump. And it's really shocking to me, honestly, when you understand that no one is perfect. And once you realize that, then people want to get into this argument of, well, who's more perfect and who's closer to being, more perfect than the other person. Joe is looking at our meme of the day candidates right now. He's distracting me. But isn't it frustrating, Joe? I mean, you were talking about Memorial Day and how people spend Memorial Day, but isn't it frustrating how millennials, especially liberals, they approach every argument as if they are morally superior than the other person on the other side? They give very few of them give actual self-respect to the other side. They come at the argument saying, I'm morally superior. This is what the press corps does. That's the only reason why, in my opinion, you would make these phony, fake tweets attributing quotes to the President of the United States that he never said. Why would you do that? Unless you are just so personally involved, you've got maybe a lot to lose, or you think, no, I am morally superior, I know what's right, and I'm trying to do what I can to get this president out of office or to trash him or to hopefully wake, quote, more people up so that they'll vote the different way. You know, I mean, it's all based on feeling and emotion. It's not actually based on facts. It's not only based on policy. I was watching a Ben Shapiro interview with Newt Gingrich. It was really good. Where, Newt was rightfully saying that the left, basically all they have is emotion, and that's how they're going to try to win the 2020 elections. You know? They're going to say, well, if Joe Biden were to be the candidate, for example. By the way, Joe Biden was missing in action on Memorial Day. Nobody knows what he's really not campaigning at all. But if Joe Biden were to get the nomination, they're going to say, well, Joe Biden is going to make us feel better, but his policies are going to be like, don't pay attention to the practical reality of what Donald Trump's done to the country. Don't pay attention to the record economy, the record unemployment rate, record low unemployment rate. Don't pay attention to the record low black unemployment rate, Hispanic unemployment. Don't pay attention to rising wages. I mean, if you like all of those things, right? But don't pay attention because the media has said that Trump's unstable, and they try to use this idea of the 25th Amendment. And so, but Joe Biden reminds us of what? Joe Biden makes us comfortable? Yeah, about as comfortable as one of those little girls in those videos. That's not, I mean, he doesn't make me comfortable, but you know what I mean? That's what the media, he didn't make a lot of those women comfortable either. And those little girls, by the way. Still, by the way, go to the parody, you got to remember the parody Joe Biden website. What was that called? Joe Biden, is it .info? Joe Biden .info. Let me see here for a second. Is that what it is? Yeah, the parody website is joebiden.info. Go there and enjoy. Uncle Joe is back, ready to take a hands-on approach to America's problems. Joe Biden has a good feel for the American people and knows exactly what they really want deep down. He's happy to open up and reveal himself to voters and will give a pounding to anybody who gets in his way. Joe Biden. And of course, we've got all of the gifs of Joe Biden making young girls extremely uncomfortable and grown women extremely uncomfortable. So we're going to take a break and a reset here. Don't forget, go to patreon.com/CNR, Conduit News Radio. Give us $5 a month. Get access to the weekly video. Back in just a moment.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
General's investigation into how we got where we are when it comes to Russia and 2016 and everything else. What's the feeling, do you think?
Yeah, well, it's the same three-ring circus in the House Democratic Caucus up there. They apparently can't accept anything that comes out of the Mueller report now. They were all for it until it didn't say what they wanted it to say, and now they're continuing to beat a dead horse and ride a dead horse, and I think they're going to stay on that all the way up through the election. They really, I think it's been called Trump derangement syndrome. It really, if there's anything that's going to make President Trump look good, or regardless if it's good for the country or not, they seem to be opposed to it. That's kind of what the attitude is on it.
Josh Siegel over at the Washington Examiner earlier.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the show. Coming up here in about, 7:00. We'll be back on the air at 7:05. We'll be talking with State Representative Mark Lowry. We'll be back on the program. It's always great to have him on. He'll be talking about his impression of the session, the 92nd General Assembly that concluded. I can't believe this. So the media is doing this thing now where they're going back and forth on a Trump-Nancy Pelosi feud, as if anyone really takes Nancy Pelosi seriously. No, in her own caucus, people aren't taking her seriously, right? She's only the Speaker of the House because she was able to raise the most money for the party apparatus. Period. That's it. And with that, you get to be the Speaker of the House. And that's the only reason she's a Speaker. She is extremely volatile. I mean, and the press conference speaks for itself. Even if you don't watch the doctored video, everyone knows that it's an edited video. It's a funny video. I'm sorry, it just is. The left trying to circle the wagons. But they're trying to make it act like there's a legitimate feud. No, it's a one-sided feud. Nobody cares what Nancy Pelosi says. And there's no really realistic way that she can hit back as hard as President Trump can hit back. It just is what it is. But they're trying to make it out like there's some sort of actual fight between the two of them that matters. And so over the Memorial Day weekend, we have a headline here where the Washington Post offers a timely piece declaring Nancy Pelosi a fashion icon. A fashion icon. This is what they want to do now. They want to they're promoting Nancy Pelosi as some sort of fashion icon. I to maybe get people who actually follow fashion to be more supportive of. I mean, aren't those people already big Democrats? It's just so ridiculous. These people are grasping at straws. They're getting more and more desperate. As the meme of the day, I think we've decided on the meme of the day. We'll be going over the meme of the day coming up here in about an hour when we end the program. With Speaker Nancy Pelosi locking horns with President Donald Trump in a battle that is getting increasingly personal, the Washington Post is out with a timely piece calling the 79-year-old California Democrat a fashion icon, describing Pelosi as, quote, a recipe for stylish feminine authority with a healthy dose of attitude. Fashion journalist Christina Binkley doesn't even try to hide her adulation for the Democrat leader. Okay. She's a fashion icon. Oh, my goodness. Telephone number 870-275-9799. And we'll be back here in just a moment with State Representative Mark Lowry. Don't go anywhere. this month, back on the 8th of this month. Headline, Republican Bruce Westerman proposes curbing western wildfires through forest management overhaul. What can you tell us about that, Bruce?
Well, I'm continuing to work on forestry policy. We've gotten bits and pieces of good policy like in the Farm Bill, and it's giving the Forest Service more tools and the Bureau of Land Management more tools to go in and do management on the 192 million acres of federal forest land that is spread out across the country. But we're still really behind the 8 ball on that. We're going to continue to see huge, devastating wildfires like we saw last year in California and like we've been seeing on an increasing scale over the past 2 or 3 decades. But we're continuing to work to try to get more policy out there and get people working in the forest, defend them, and do controlled burns and all those management activities that will make the forest more resilient. I've also got there's a disaster relief bill that the Senate passed yesterday when, after we'd actually left, had our final votes of the week and left D.C., the Senate passed a disaster relief bill that had some language in it to help address management activities on the Forest Service, and that was actually an amendment that I wrote and got a Democrat named Jimmy Panetta from California to co-sponsor the amendment with me, and we got that into the original House version of the disaster relief bill, and the Senate picked it up and put it in their bill as well. But the House isn't in session right now, so we may end up having to go back and vote on this disaster relief bill, which it's a accumulation of disasters. The hurricanes that hit down in the panhandle of Florida and Georgia, the wildfires out west, the flooding in the Midwest, and some additional funding for Puerto Rico that got put in the bill.
So I saw that. And obviously, we got also, the hurricane season's going to heat up again starting in June 1st. Back on the wildfire thing, you talk about good policy, like controlled burns, thinning the forest. But you got some people over, from what I've read, in California, that they think there's something wrong with that you're not adhering to some sort of, EPA dogma or protect the earth dogma if you don't just let the forests, let them alone. Don't try to manage them at all. So how do you overcome that?
It's what I call we've loved our trees to death. We won't do any kind of management, and a lot of that's happened because of environmental groups that, whether or not they started out with good purpose or not, most of them that are opposing the management now are all about raising money and having their cause. But there are the mainstream environmental groups that understand the benefits of a healthy forest. They're getting behind more active management, and even out in California, this really shocked me. But it shows you how much they're starting to get pressure on this. Is Gavin Newsom, the very liberal governor of California, has gone in and waived a lot of state red tape policies that prevent them from doing management on the land out in California. He basically said that we don't have time to go through all these hurdles to do the management before the fire season gets here. He says we've got to get in and we've got to act now. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of attitude it's going to take to get some of this work done. There are groups that have weaponized environmental laws, something I didn't even know about until I got into Congress. There's a law called the Equal Access to Justice Act. It was put in place during the Civil Rights Movement, really with a good purpose to allow someone whose civil rights had been violated by the government, who didn't have money to hire a lawyer, could actually file suit against the government, and the government would pay the legal fees if somebody's civil rights were being violated. Well, some of the environmental groups have figured out that they can form their own nonprofit, and it may be, a couple of lawyers working out of a
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. My name is Paul Harrell, and you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. This is Conduit News. And you can find out more at conduitnews.com. We've been doing these impressions of the session. We got another one for you. Welcome back to the program. State Representative Mark Lowry is with us. Mark, it's always great to have you on, sir. How are you this morning?
Thank you, Paul. Doing good. Glad to be with you.
Yes, sir. Go ahead and remind us. District 39, that's who you represent. Where is that exactly?
It's primarily made up of Maumelle and then some areas of northwest Pulaski County, Oak Grove, Marche, Morgan, and then a little bit of North Little Rock over in Amboy.
All right. Well, so let's just give you the floor. State Representative Mark Lowry, what was your impression of the session 2019?
Well, I thought it was a productive session. I'd been asked to kind of give it a scorecard or a report card, and I'd say it was probably anywhere from a B- to a B. I was concerned about some of the tax increases, specifically the motor fuel tax. I think my score probably is also based on just some internal things that I perceived within the House, just splits between Republicans over some really critical conservative issues. And transformation, that's something that I think we can't really put a grade on right now. The strength and the good of the transformation package is something that we're just going to have to watch later to see if it's effective as the governor hopes it's going to be.
Well, okay. So you mentioned taxes. That was concerning to you. I know that was concerning to me. I mean, we did have, we've gone over this. We did have a solid income tax cut, at least in the standalone form, but then kind of come back with other legislation. And the numbers that I have seen have kind of been doing the math. It looks like when it's all said and done, it's a net tax increase. What do you think?
Well, I'd say that that's probably true, especially if you look at the taxes that would have most affect lower income, lower middle income constituents. Gave them a tax cut, but then turned around, and with the motor fuel tax, it probably more disproportionately affects the lower class. So, with one hand we gave, and then with the other hand we took away. So that's probably one of those areas where I don't know if it's necessarily a net increase to that particular part of the constituency, but it certainly is something that I think the lower income folks, lower middle class, everyone's going to feel the sting of the motor fuel tax.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, and I hear legislators all the time talking about they voted their constituency, what their constituency was telling them. I've never specifically done that. There's not been a lot of issues where I felt like my constituency in Maumelle felt a certain way that was maybe cutting across the tide. But this time, we're building a interchange in Maumelle for a third entrance. And the city of Maumelle, the constituents of Maumelle, ended up having to vote themselves a half-cent tax increase to pay for that because the Department of Transportation really provided them very little money. So I felt like voting for my constituency meant listen, we've already put a tax burden on ourselves locally to pay for the major road work that we're going to need. I don't think it's right to also put on top of that an increase in the motor fuel tax, at least as far as voting for my constituency.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think that's good. Absolutely. There does become a limit, and I think we're seeing this really statewide. It appears from the DFNA's numbers that when you take the gas tax, even the internet tax, when I know that had corporate reform attached to it, that's going to come into effect later. Then you got the half-cent sales tax that's now going to be going to the vote of the people in 2020. If that comes in, we're talking about a whole lot of money coming from the people to the government. And we now you had Fort Smith that had to vote down a potential sales tax increase. On the other side of the state have Jonesboro. They're trying to raise taxes locally. And so I'm just kind of seeing this trend here, and I just wonder, is there a line? Is there a line where we say, when I go purchase something, is 10% enough? Is 11% enough? Is 12%? I mean, there is a line, I think, where at some point you're disincentivizing economic activity,
Well, absolutely. And, a lot of communities also have advertising and promotion taxes on top of their sales taxes. And there is a point where, you reach a choke point. And I feel like some communities are probably at that point. Mm-hmm. One of the things that has most alarmed me is when I've looked at school millage taxes. I dug kind of deep on this thing and considered sponsoring some legislation this last session. Just a little over $500 million is collected annually by school districts for debt service millage. In other words, to pay for buildings. They've gone out, they put on the ballot that we want to build a new high school or a new elementary school or a new auditorium, whatever. But of that $500+ million, over half of it goes for something other than debt service. Less than half goes to actually pay the debt service. The school districts are, and it's always put on the ballot as for other educational purposes. Well, to me, that is being deceptive to the voters. You've gone out and you've promoted the tax to pay for a building, and yet over half of that debt service money is going probably into the budget to keep them floating. So I think that there's a major shell game going on with school millage taxes.
We're talking with State Representative Mark Lowry from District 39, the Maumelle area. Mark, you're giving your impression of the session here. Let's talk about some other issues. We talked taxes. What about social issues? How do you think we did there?
Well, that was one of the areas where I was most concerned. We had a bill come to the House sponsored by a number of Democrat senators. It was looking at health issues and expressing interest in trying to help in areas of obesity, tobacco, smoking, teenage suicide, but they also threw in a section about teaching sex ed. And we could not, conservatives like myself, could not see anything in there that would prohibit Planned Parenthood from going to these school districts under the guise of this legislation and actually providing their own sex ed courses. So I sponsored an amendment that just basically said, and the sponsors on the House side were saying, we have no intent of allowing Planned Parenthood. We don't even know where that's coming from. So I said, well, okay, if that's not your intent, then you shouldn't mind my amendment that says any organization that does abortion referrals, abortion counseling, can provide this education. The amendment was voted down, not by Democrats, but by Republicans. And that really concerned me. It really started, I think, and I've said to two different Republican organizations, the biggest challenge to our supermajority, our Republican supermajority, the biggest challenge are Republicans. We're duty bound, I think, as voters, to make sure that these people that are running as Republicans are truly Republicans.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I do think that's the problem, especially when you look at what happened in Arkansas. I think what explains a lot of that is, the Democrat Party in Arkansas has been increasingly unpopular, a sinking ship, if you will. And so, it's now known, if you want to amass political power, you're most likely going to have to do that using the Republican Party as a means. And so that means that, primaries are very important, I think, in the Republican Party, because that's where you really get to talk about why you believe what the platform says,
Right. And, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just keeping on the social issues, though, but we did do some good stuff on the pro-life, in the pro-life area, right?
Absolutely. We sure did. And I'm proud of that. I don't know what our current ranking is nationwide. The last I heard is that we're probably the second most pro-life state in the country, and I'm extremely proud of that, and glad that we had the opportunity to do even more this session.
Well, interestingly enough, with Georgia, you have the Georgia heartbeat protection law. Arkansas has already passed one of those a couple sessions ago. The Alabama law, and so now the liberal press, they're covering this. They're whipped up into a frenzy. And I think to myself, because of that abortion trigger law that was run by Senator Rayford and Mary Bentley on the House side, that was a huge deal. That if Roe versus Wade is overturned, then Arkansas's anti-abortion laws go into effect. I thought that would get a lot more attention than it did, and it really didn't.
Right. And I've read all of the analysis of whether Alabama's law went too far. The Supreme Court, if it gets to the Supreme Court, they have the ability to be able to speak to the issues of Roe v. Wade and still disagree with the extreme penalties that might be in that law as far as an abortion doctor performing the procedure knowing that it's illegal in the state. I think that's the thing that people have said, yeah, Alabama went too far, 90-year penalty or something like that. But the Supreme Court has the ability to be able to split those issues out. The main thing is us getting a court challenge on Roe v. Wade. And I think that there's great potential for Arkansas's trigger law actually being able to be kicked in. I
do too. Towards the end of the session, we had an issue with sanctuary cities. What were your thoughts on
that? That's one of the other areas I was concerned about. I was also concerned that Senator Mark Johnson and I ran legislation to protect monuments. There's this trend across the country of liberals pulling down, monuments to Civil War heroes. So there's discussion, I think in one state of taking down monuments to Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. So Senator Johnson and I sponsored legislation, got through the Senate, got to the House committee, and once again, it was voted down by Republicans. And some of the feedback was, well, we don't need to worry about it in Arkansas. Well, within 2 weeks after the adjournment of the session, the Jefferson County judge said that the Civil War monument in front of the courthouse is being taken down somewhere else. So, there just really is not a lot of discipline among the Republicans, and that's something that happens. I think it's happened in the past when the Democrats had supermajorities, but right now the Democrats are more consistent in being able to vote as a bloc. The Republicans are extremely split, and a lot of it is on social issues. Some of it's on issues of school choice.
Yes.
Vouchers for students, even the Succeed Scholarship Program. We were making some technical corrections on a bill of whether a student has to have IEP, or can they also have an ISP? And some Republicans wanted to relitigate the original legislation allowing this voucher program for developmentally disabled kids. I mean, this is concerning to me when you're talking about Republicans standing in the way of taking care of kids who have, and parents have made the choice that they would rather forego the public education for their developmentally disabled child, go to private school, and some Republicans are saying, no, we think that's the camel's nose under the tent.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the things I was really ready for the session to be over, because I was so frustrated by seeing these splits in our conservative majority.
Yeah, you mentioned school choice. You know, that was one where 2 years ago we had a lot of trouble getting traction on that, and that problem still persists out of this session. We couldn't get anything really done on school choice.
Right, and one of the problems of that, this last session we saw a change in how committee makeup is done. The speaker chooses, all the members that are on the committee, whereas in the past you went by seniority. We knew from day one, those of us who were for school choice, that at the most there were only 8 of 20 school choice advocates on the Education Committee. We knew that there was no way we could get a school choice bill out of the House Committee.
Wow.
So a voucher bill did come to us. The Senate got it out. It came to us. And once again, Republicans, I mean, the 8 out of 20 wasn't because 12 of the 20 were Democrats. There really, I think, were maybe only 4 or 5 Democrats on the Education Committee. So we came up short because of Republicans voting against that. Their argument is that, as Republicans, as conservatives, we should respect local control. Matter of fact, I had one constituent write me and say, Republicans, you need to reread your party platform. It specifically says that the Arkansas Republican Party supports local control. And I've already spoken to Doyle Webb, and I said, we need to look closer at that, because we're seeing lots of situations, especially with education, where local control is not the panacea. And we're having to take over, the state is having to take over school districts for fiscal distress, for academic distress. And I've pointed out in previous sessions how egregious it is that school superintendents are just socking away in a bank account a large amount of the money that the state sends to them for education, even though they're going to get funded first every year. They're going to get funded first.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they're sitting on, school districts cumulatively are sitting on $2 billion.
Wow.
$2 billion they're sitting on. And when I've asked superintendents why, they think that they can get away with a flippant answer of saying, well, we're saving for a rainy day. And then I point out to them, well, when your school district only has 30% of the students reading at grade level, I'd say it's not just raining, it's storming.
Yes. You're exactly right. Well, and, on that, real quick, we got to go, but I just want to say, on that issue of local control, I think everybody, they want local control, and I think that in the concept of school choice, ideally, that's what this is about, because the taxpayer dollars are being funded from individuals and parents. And so, I don't think there's anything more locally controlling than allowing the parents to have more choice. You know what I mean? I think that is that's local control. So I think it would still fit within the platform, just in that context.
Absolutely, and of course, I think that the local control in education is a nod to school boards, not superintendents.
Yes,
to school boards, and so conservatives really need to get active in running for school boards. typically, there's just that's where we need to focus a lot of our attention. So anyway,
right.
I appreciate the opportunity to come on the show and talk to you.
Absolutely. It's been great. State Representative Mark Lowry, really appreciate it. Thanks so much. We'll do it again soon, sir.
All right. Thanks very much.
Folks, that's State Representative Mark Lowry. We got Americans for Prosperity State Director, Americans for Prosperity Arkansas, Ryan Norris. He'll be on at 7:33. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere.
In California, this really shocked me, but it shows you how much they're starting to get pressure on this. Is Gavin Newsom, the very liberal governor of California, has gone in and waived a lot of state red tape policies that prevent them from doing management on the land out in California. He basically said that, we don't have time to go through all these hurdles to do the management before the fire season gets here. He says we've got to get in and we've got to act now. So that's the kind of attitude it's going to take to get some of this work done. There are groups that have weaponized environmental laws, something I didn't even know about until I got into Congress. There's a law called the Equal Access to Justice Act. It was put in place during the Civil Rights Movement, really with a good purpose to allow someone whose civil rights has been violated.
Hey folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. For all of our listeners, if you ever missed the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your number one source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the program. We're broadcasting up at facebook.com/Conduit News as well as our YouTube channel. Feel free to go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, click the little bell to receive notifications. If you want to go further to support the show, you go to patreon.com/CNR. Conduit News Radio. Patreon.com/CNR. $5 a month gets you an extra weekly video from me. And we're just going to give you guys extra content, and we would very much appreciate anything you want to throw our way. I mean, you can give more than that if you want. We would encourage that as well. But it'd be a way for you to support a program that you enjoy getting the news from. We have the wall being built. Did you hear about this one? From the Daily Wire, Emily Zanotti. Fed up waiting for the feds, private groups are building a border wall in New Mexico on private land. The Washington Times reported that We Build the Wall unveiled their half-mile section over the weekend. 18-foot steel bollard wall is similar to the designs used by the Border Patrol, sealing off a part of the border that had been a striking gap in existing fencing. The gap runs from the Texas border, where it ends at the Rio Grande, up through southern New Mexico, along with lower elevations. We Build the Wall. By the way, I think we interviewed an angel dad from We Build the Wall, Steve Ronnebeck, who lost his son in a convenience store shooting. We Build the Wall claims the half-a-mile section of steel wall is the first privately constructed part of the border wall, and that their project moved faster, and at $8 million required less funding than a similar project headed up by the federal government. Well, imagine that. Private people get involved and they can actually do things more efficient than the government. We'll be right back with Americans for Prosperity's Ryan Norris.
By the government, who didn't have money to hire a lawyer, could actually file suit against the government, and the government would pay the legal fees if somebody's civil rights were being violated. Well, some of these environmental groups have figured out that they can form their own nonprofit, and it may be, a couple of lawyers working out of a small office somewhere that puts up a website, and they've got their own little environmental nonprofit. And every time the Forest Service puts a management plan out, regardless of where it is in the country, they can file a suit in federal court under EJA, which is the Equal Access to Justice Act, and they can get their legal fees paid for by the federal government by suing the federal government to stop the management plan, which is not at all about the environment or making forests healthy. It's about these folks being able to run up a lot of hours preparing a legal argument, and then many times the courts will reimburse their legal fees based on D.C. Lawyer rates. So it's there's a racket out there with that. And then you got some of these other environmental groups that they don't want you doing anything in the forest other than standing back and leaving them alone. And there's places where we can let nature run its course, like out in the national parks. Yellowstone National Park, it's got a lot of lodgepole pine in it, and it's going to burn like every 100 years. That's kind of the life expectancy of lodgepole pine, but it's a natural process, and we can let it burn and watch it grow back. And we can also see, like from the big fire in the 1980s, there was a huge increase in elk population and wolf population after that fire, when the early growth started back out there. So we know the science on how to do it. There's just a lot of politics that get in the way of doing it.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I know, especially you being a forester. We're talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman from District 4, and we're kind of running out of time.
But
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's some exciting things happening in forestry in Arkansas, which we have a lot of forests in our state, and especially in the 4th District. There's a lot of new jobs being developed in forestry. Walmart just announced last week that they're going to build their new corporate headquarters out of mass timbers, which is a great use of forest products. The University of Arkansas has built some 5-story dormitories out of mass timbers.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Eight 870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you want to contribute to the conversation this morning. Hey, folks, welcome to the program. We have the State Director for Americans for Prosperity, Arkansas. We got Mr. Ryan Norris is with us. Ryan, how are you this morning?
Man, I'm doing exceptionally well. We just had a great day of remembrance with our family for the Memorial Day. Remembering all the people who gave the ultimate sacrifice so that we could have conversations like this one, Paul.
Absolutely. It was a good weekend as well, and I really loved the tributes. Some of the videos that people had posted, on Twitter's is one that I'm thinking of that really just put highlights what the sacrifice does to the families of these.
Yes.
That's to me is what is just so devastating. Maybe it's because I haven't been a dad for too long. 2 years, I guess, in July, and it just kind of wrecks you on the inside. And so it really puts into a completely different context for me what really these families go through once their loved one gives up the ultimate sacrifice. So Ryan, I wanted to have you on because I know Americans for Prosperity Arkansas. I know you guys are focused on policy, economic freedom issues here in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you were monitoring what was going on in the 92nd General Assembly here in Arkansas. So I wanted to, Ryan Norris from Americans for Prosperity Arkansas, what was your impression of the session 2019?
Well, it was kind of a, as every session is, kind of a mixed bag in a way. If session would have ended about 2 weeks in and everybody would have been able to go home, I think I would have had a much better session than how it ended up towards the end there. But there were some positive things, and so I like to focus on that at the moment. We did bring down the top marginal rate with that Senate Bill 211. That was great. There were some other bills out there that I think were very helpful in bringing down some corporate taxes, doing the carry forwards, those kind of things. But then, of course, you get into the highway funding, which was kind of the theme, I guess, of this session. I mean, that was where we were all going. They were trying to get the good stuff out of the way first, so that then they could come around the back end and increase our gas taxes, and then put the come over the ballot question for us in 2020. So
the half-cent sales tax.
Half-cent sales tax. Yeah. So all of this said and done, I'm not quite convinced that it was a net positive for the taxpayer. I'm seeing by my numbers that, for the foreseeable future, we're still paying a little more out of pocket for our government than previous to the session. I would like to see that changed. I think there are some things that have been put in place that may help to bring down the size and the cost of government over time. But in general, if there's a problem in Arkansas, we're going to try to find a tax for it first and then reforms for it later. And we kind of need to reverse that. We need to try to do the reforms first. I think that's the one of the first places that you go to as a family when you're looking at, your budget is you look through the budget for the things that you can save and the cost savings and the things that you can cut before you immediately turn around and say, well, man, I need to increase my revenues on this. Mm-hmm. And I've just always been kind of, the pitch is always made more to the interests that are in the room when it comes to these changes, specifically, around taxes. And it's less towards the people. I would like to see the argument well laid out, the campaign well laid out to the people first, before we go through and say, okay, well, we need another, $300 million worth of annual revenue for our roads per se. Mm-hmm. It just seems like the people are the how it's going to impact the average Arkansan is kind of the last thing they think of.
Yeah, I think you're right. What you're describing is that I'm really glad that you're focusing on this. Like there needs to be a mentality shift away from, like you say, looking at taxes every single time to, solve the problem. So long term, Ryan, and I appreciate your thoughts on that because those are some of I share your concerns. Long term, if you can't combat the mentality, let's say, is it going to take, is it going to take 100% Republicans in the Senate or 100% Republicans in the House? I don't necessarily know if you could ever get there, and I don't even think if you did, you still have this mentality issue. So how do you shift it? Is there a way to use the law or to actually come up with a policy that's crafted in statute that would prevent the growth of government that we're seeing in Arkansas?
Yes, there is. There definitely is, but such as I think we've had conversations about this before about. I don't want to say necessarily model legislation because I'm not a big fan of model legislation because each state's kind of different. But the principles behind legislation such as the Taxpayer Bill of Rights model, I think is interesting, which is, for those that don't know what that formula is, it basically marks a 0 year for a state budget and state revenue, and then it says the budget can only increase by the percentage of population growth plus inflation. So if it's 2% inflation, 2% population growth, you can only grow the government budget by 4% the next budget cycle. What I like about that in principle is the idea that there is consistency, that there is some controls that the people can depend on, that their government's not going to grow beyond that point, unless you can always put in there's some kind of catastrophic emergency, et cetera, et cetera. But what I found out, Paul, from my time under the dome, is it shocked me how many people would be for certain taxes. And what you find out is that everybody that's sitting at the table knows that sooner or later their industry, their sector of the economy, is going to be in the hot seat. It's inevitable. You're going to be in the hot seat, and they're going to increase taxes on your industry or whatever that may be. So what they do is they are all band together and basically say, "Hey, well, at least it's not me this time. I know it's coming, so I'm going to support this tax increase," because basically all of them, as I pointed out on the highway taxes, this gets passed on to the consumer. The industry only it's not like a magic cash register in a business. It doesn't automatically push a button and money magically appears. It comes from the pockets of people who are buying goods and services from you, which means that they can either buy less, they will end up buying less goods and services if those taxes go. And so we really need to struggle with that question before we decide taxing is the only way. It needs to be proven that it's the only way to the people before we go down that road. But yes, there is legislation such as Tabor out there that maybe Arkansas could model off of, take pieces of, that help add consistency to our revenue and to our budgeting structures. Because right now, there's no top end. We have the Revenue Stabilization Act, but that only says that we can't spend more than we take in. That doesn't keep us from taking in as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, and then spending it. That's the thing is the RSA is good, but it's bad because it just means that everything they take in extra is gonna get funded because they have that A, B, C category. We're talking with Ryan Norris. He's the director of Americans for Prosperity Arkansas. He's giving his impression of the session for the 92nd General Assembly. Now, you actually, am I correct in stating that Americans for Prosperity, you guys were against the raising of the gas tax at the wholesale level for gas and diesel, and did you actually speak on that in committee?
Yes, I did. It was my lonely self versus the world. It was very... I wouldn't even say Pyrrhic victory. I got wiped out because you're looking at all the interests that are standing up there that are very powerful lobbies. And Americans for Prosperity, we want to be the voice of the people. That's kind of a broad statement, I guess. But what I try to do is I put myself into thinking of, okay, so you increase gas taxes. That means less money for particularly those that are on fixed income. They don't get an opportunity if you're on Social Security to go out and and necessarily improve your revenue stream or something along those lines. They may be beyond their workable years or have other things that they that keep them from gaining some employment. And so I try to sit at the table and say, listen, have you thought this through all the way? For example, why do we need to, in the 2019 session, go ahead and pass this saying we need the ballot question when we still have another session between now and when this tax sunsets? With all these tax decreases that they've been telling us about, like SB 211, the lower the top rates, the cut to the middle class, cut to the lower class, all these wonderful things that say that Arkansas has a vibrant economy. Trust that. Let's take a couple of years, see what the economic outcome is for all these positive reforms, and then we may find out we don't need to raise the $300 million in additional taxes. We may have it by natural growth of an economy that's working for everybody.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
They should. That's what I made the argument for. Of course, it did didn't go anywhere.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, we've already seen evidence that you're correct. So let's just say that right now. You are correct, Ryan Norris, because we already saw that in April. They had over $100 million that they didn't have. They didn't think they were going to have. It was over projections. And
Right.
you know, that right there, it would have paid for the $95 million in wholesale. If we're talking about the situation with the half-cent sales tax that's set to sunset, I think that you're right. I don't understand, with a session in between, why you wouldn't wait and see how things are going.
Right.
It just gets to a point where the people only have a finite amount of resources, and I actually think, and I talked about this a little bit when it happened. I'm not so sure that they didn't need 75% of both chambers to even pass that gas tax increase. Now, that's a whole nother argument, but I think that there was, they're taxing a product twice, Ryan. We already pay at the pump, and then they tax it at the wholesale level.
Yeah, I see that argument. I don't disagree with you, Paul, on that. I think that just every tax needs a 75%, and trying to find a loophole around it is, again, I point to as evidence that they're not thinking about the people. It's how do we get this accomplished? They think that if the people aren't wanting it, then they don't want it. And so trying to do a workaround is not the way that I think principled governance should happen. And we see this happen all the time. You go and you see people vote something down maybe at a local level, but then the local government will turn around and try to find another backdoor way of funding whatever project they want in the first place. Government has seemingly lost its sense of accountability to the people that it represents. And every good idea is the best idea ever and should be funded every single time. That's what I think Arkansas culturally we have got to get back to. The elected official is a public servant. They are supposed to do the will of the people. Trying to do, special elections that have lower voter turnout so that that you can get those, get your idea passed and funded. That happens all the time. Of course, it's getting to be rare. This year we've seen several of those local taxes get voted down overwhelmingly.
Yes.
And I think the people are starting to recognize that. So I think that the people that are interested in this and getting their government back need to start taking active steps to participate in an organized way with those they agree with and are aligned with to help take this government back to where it's not just what happens under the dome in Little Rock is what decides what happens to the rest of the state. It needs to be the people engaged.
There was one more issue. I know we're running out of time. We're talking with State Director for Americans for Prosperity Arkansas, Ryan Norris. There was an issue that was voted down that I think was a good thing that it was voted down, and it would have required the disclosure of donors, to nonprofits. Now, this was a terrible idea, but it seemed like there were people, Ryan, that thought that privacy wasn't something that private groups should enjoy, I guess. What were your thoughts on that and how it went down?
Yeah, so the House bill that went through was to basically expand the definition of what the term is eluding me right now, but basically your C3, C4 operations. It expands what a ballot question committee would be, or a
independent expenditure.
Yes, independent expenditure. Yes, independent expenditure. And basically setting up structure to where if anyone donated to those organizations, and it could be that you donate to, we were at the table fighting against this with Rose Mims from Arkansas Right to Life, that anyone who donated, if you had an opinion about a judicial candidate, that you could potentially have to disclose that information of who your donors are from your organization to the Secretary of State's office. And so it was expanding that. And many people are like, well, we want to know who donated. Well, let's get this straight. The reason that was stated for doing this was to freeze free speech. It was to be able to drag people who have private opinions and want to support causes in a private way, to drag them into the public square and be able to say, hey, look at what you did, and we're against you, and we're going to do, now that we know where you're at and who you work for, because you had to put your name, who your employers were, all these kind of things. We fought very much against it because we are First Amendment all the way as an organization. We even had organizations like the ACLU came to give us their support. Said, "Hey, yes, we don't know if showing up at the table may be helpful to your cause, but we agree with you on this. That yes, privacy is for citizens, transparency is for government.
Yes.
And whenever you start seeing that shifting, you need to raise up, no matter where it's at, and squash that as soon as possible."
Yeah.
And there was a lot of individuals who did stand up on that, and I really do applaud Arkansas Right to Life and Ms. Rose Mims for helping with that issue.
Yeah, I do too, and it really goes to show you, how much of a sway that organization certainly has, because they were like, hey, wait a second, we don't, if we have an opinion on a judicial candidate and convey that in any way, well, all of a sudden we have to give up our donors. And in this society, Ryan, of how radical the left can be in doxing people and mobbing them and getting them fired. I mean, that's reprisals, political reprisals, pulling your business license or threatening to do. I mean, all of these things can happen, and so it's good. I agree with what you say. Privacy is for citizens, transparency is for government. Ryan Norris, it's always great to talk to you, sir. I appreciate the work you're doing at Americans for Prosperity Arkansas, and I'd love to have you on anytime, sir.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity, Paul. We enjoy speaking with you and letting everybody know what we're up to.
All righty. Ryan Norris, everybody. We're going to take a break. Going to reset here. Going to be right back with your meme of the day. Don't go anywhere.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
When it comes down to it, every guy wants to
construction as well. So we're seeing some positive things happening with forestry in Arkansas, which it's been happening that way for quite some time.
Last question. Do you think the Democrats in the House will impeach President Donald Trump?
They almost can't help themselves, even though they really have no evidence or anything to impeach him on. It's almost like that's what they've made their utmost objective, what they're focused on. And I think, with all of Speaker Pelosi's faults, she does have a pretty savvy political mind, and I think she realizes that's not the best place for them to be politically, but I don't think she can get in front of the snowball and stop it. I think it's a snowball headed downhill.
Wow. Congressman Bruce Westerman, it's always great to have you on, sir. Appreciate the work that you're doing, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, have a great weekend, Paul.
All right, you too. Thank you so much, Bruce.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. All right, so little recap. If you haven't checked out the Joe Biden for President parody website, joebiden.info, we've had it on the show before. You've got to. Also, over the weekend, some structural issues. Potentially, the Israeli government may not have enough consent to form around Benjamin Netanyahu, who did win re-election, but now they may have to have other elections. The European Union parliamentary elections were big wins for anti-European Union parties in Italy. Even France has a victory in terms of Le Pen, her party beating Macron's party. Then you have the Brexit party, which is 6 weeks old, in the United Kingdom winning seats. There are still a lot of people in the Parliament of the European Union that want the European Union to survive, but the coalition of anti-European Union or Eurosceptics is growing and solidified, more importantly. Also, Liz Cheney saying Peter Strzok and Lisa Page might have committed treason, and she's getting all kinds of flack for that, but she's just because she's speaking the truth. And what else do we have? We had a fake news quote from a Time columnist claiming that Donald Trump said something about Kim Jong-un and Joe Biden that he did not say. And that was proven fake news because the guy had to admit he just made up a quote out of thin air. And we didn't get to this story. Maybe I'll get to it a little bit in the next couple of days. But MIT rocket scientist has now weighed in on a leaked memo that says that back in April of 2018, where you had another alleged chemical gas attack in Syria, that they're now saying the whole thing, that they've got evidence now. And Tucker Carlson over at Fox News reported on this, saying that it was not a real, that it was a staged gas attack. It was fake. And yet, of course, the United States, we sent a bunch of cruise missiles over there when that happened. And so I'll be talking about that in the days to come, because I find that fascinating. The whole Syria thing is a lot more complicated than you think. And if Hillary Clinton would have won, my contention is we would be in Syria. Our troops would be on the ground in Syria fighting some sort of proxy war against the Russians. And so, case in point, that's why it must be the Russians' fault that Trump won. You see what they're doing there? Anyway, that's at least my hypothesis. Our meme of the day is this. Leftists, it's a courtesy of Epic Conservative Memes on Instagram, Epic Conservative Memes. So you can follow Epic Conservative Memes if you want. Here it is. Leftists be like old, rich, white males. Bernie Sanders, thumbs up. Yeah, just kind of pointing out a little hypocrisy here.
The funny thing is, this is part of the
what?
That one meme. What is it?
Oh yeah, this is an NPC. Yeah. Yeah. This is also a NPC meme, which is really good. That's a good observation. A non-playable character meme, which I've never seen. That in and of itself, if you haven't seen the NPC memes, you need to certainly get on that, because it's pretty awesome.
This is actually two memes mixed into one.
Mm-hmm.
Two meme formats. You got the NPC meme, and then you have the Drake meme.
Oh, really?
This is from one of Drake's music videos, where he, at one point, he kind of like puts his head off to the side and puts his hand up like he doesn't want it, and then he's just like, yeah. So this is the combination of both.
Ah, okay, all right. Well, so I didn't even get that.
This is a duo meme.
I got you. So leftists be like old rich white males. Nah. Bernie Sanders, yeah, thumbs up. And anyway, this is the problem that the left has. I mean, literally, if they go with Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden, the radical left, I don't think they're going to be motivated to vote. Especially when the news is going to be Facebook censors another Joe Biden making little girls uncomfortable at photo op video. I mean, because that's going to happen, Oh, by the way, on the European Union front, establishment European Union types, you know what they're saying? They're saying that the anti-European Union people that won all the power are gained in power. They did it because of fake news on Facebook. And Facebook didn't police itself again. I think we've seen this one before, as a throwback to our Friday meme of the day. Hey, we'll post this meme of the day at Conduit News on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News, and at Conduit News on Twitter.